What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Baseline Scoop, talking about everything past, present, and future about your Philadelphia 76ers. I'm your host, Zach Ciavolella, and I am absolutely stoked about this pod joining PSN Radio. If you haven't yet, check out PhillySportsNetwork.com and the other podcasts on PSN Radio for even more brilliant Philly sports coverage. Opening up for us, this is local band Off Color. Be sure to check them out on Spotify and Apple Music. They're going to be around for quite a while opening up our show for us. Now, once again, welcome to the first ever episode of the Baseline Scoop. On this podcast, I will be covering all things past, present, and future about your Philadelphia 76ers. And with that said, today, for our first ever episode, we are going to focus on the future. Specifically, the Sixers' hunt for a new head coach. Now, there are a lot of names floating around there, from Ty Lue to Stan Van Gundy to Sixers' current assistant head coach Imei Udoka. While they're all popular names and they all have their reasons for being just that, I have narrowed down my top choices to fill that Sixers vacancy at head coach. Now, before we get to that, we're going to discuss some of the other names that are often mentioned in kind of a semi-quick, rapid-fire, yes, no, why not, or really, I guess I should just say, why not? So, starting off, we have Jason Kitt, who is an assistant head coach currently for the Los Angeles Lakers. Personally, I believe that Jason Kidd has never added anything to any NBA team as a head coach. He is a member of the NBA Hall of Fame. He is one of the greatest point guards of all time. He deserves the award even for most creative timeout. And if you don't know what I mean, Google Jason Kidd timeout and you will, even if you do know what I'm talking about, look it up. It's a great video. So just as a head coach, though, he doesn't really seem to understand, really how to coach exactly. So, he was brought in initially as a head coach. You hope that he would be kind of a personality manager, a la Steve Kerr, someone the players could relate to. Obviously, he, again, was one of the greatest point guards of all time, so you know that he has an understanding of the game itself. But really, when he was in Brooklyn, when he was in Milwaukee, it just didn't work out, hardly close to what both teams imagined they were getting when they hired Jason Kidd. So he is still young in his coaching career, that is. You hope that he can learn under Frank Vogel, who's the current head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Vogel isn't really known for his coaching tree, but even still, maybe he learns from LeBron James. He could still have a bright future as a head coach. I really just don't see it as the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, at least not for the 2020-21 NBA season. So that was a little long-winded for a rapid fire, but anyway, the short answer is absolutely not. Moving on, Lionel Hollins, he's another absolutely not. Now, I love Hollins as a coach. His time with the Grit and Grind Grizzlies helped me fall in love with the NBA. Unfortunately, I truly feel like his time as an NBA coach is over. His coaching style is just not one that's supported by the modern-day NBA. It's the same reason, to a degree, that I feel the Tom Thibodeau situation in New York is absolutely sure to be disastrous. Tom Thibodeau, I think Lionel Hollins is a better coach than Tom Thibodeau, but they have that same kind of old school style that you just see more and more teams going away from. So once again, it's a shame, but Lionel Hollins likely will not be the Sixers' new head coach. I really don't see any chance of that happening, especially considering what I've heard so far coming out of the team. So now moving on to a name that's a little bit more familiar, Imei Udoka. What can you say about Imei Udoka? The man was tasked with leading the Sixers defense. This is a Sixers defense that put in its worst effort in years. Now, obviously, there were certain things happening that were beyond his control, such as poor roster construction. While it certainly isn't all his fault what happened, it did not give me any faith that he can run this franchise. He is a highly sought-after name, and I wish him well in Chicago or in Oklahoma City, wherever he finds his head coaching gig, but it just shouldn't be with the Sixers. Now, the next name he's a little bit controversial. There are some who say, absolutely, why not, get him right now? Others are saying he would be probably the worst head coaching candidate. I'm somewhere in the middle there, but anyway, we come to a coach who seems to have been blackballed by the NBA, and that's Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson, again, has been a very popular name, but I really don't know if he's ever going to have another job coaching an NBA team. And it's tough to tell you exactly why. Now, there's a little bit of a hint coming from Warriors owner Joe Lacob. He had a little bit to say on the matter. Apparently, Jackson didn't make a lot of friends in the Warriors organization. You may know that Jackson was the head coach before Steve Kerr, so many attribute him to one of two things: either assembling the roster that Steve Kerr took on to the finals, or squandering opportunities with said roster, which is why they brought in Steve Kerr. But no matter which end you fall on, what happened to Mark Jackson, it doesn't really seem like it was an on-the-court issue. Lacob was quoted as saying, you can't have 200 people in the organization not like you. Now, I don't know exactly what Jackson did to get to that point, and I really would be lying if I said I wasn't interested. He intrigues me, but really without knowing more about that situation, it's a little tough to give him the green light. But in any case, Mark Jackson, I really hope he gets another job as a head coach, and I hope soon, but I don't see it happening with the Sixers. I don't see them handpicking him to be the new coach of the team. Now, another popular name, unfortunately, I do not see this person becoming the head coach of the Sixers either, and it is through no fault of their own. And that person is San Antonio Spurs assistant coach Becky Hammon. Hammon is an absolutely brilliant mind. I would say her, along with Dawn Staley, are the two coaches who have an absolutely amazing chance at breaking the gender barrier that is in the NBA as far as head coaches are concerned. I do not think that the Sixers are a team that would make that decision, even though Hammon has a decorated resume. She really she's one of the brightest minds on all of this list and really in the entire NBA. I think that any team that would choose her as their head coach, really, they're going to be getting a winner. They're going to be getting a fantastic candidate. But for an organization that has gone through as much recent bad publicity as the 76ers have, and they've been under the microscope as intensely as the Sixers have, I don't know that they're going to want the extra attention that comes with a coach like, and this is true for Becky Hammon and also Dawn Staley. So really, I don't see either of those being legitimate candidates purely for that reason, and it's an absolute shame. Hammon, I really do fully believe in, and it seems as though she may not even get her chance with her current team, the San Antonio Spurs. It seemed for a while that she was the heir apparent if and when Greg Popovich were to ever retire. At least that was the thought until the Spurs brought in legend Tim Duncan as an assistant coach, and he really just kind of started taking over all the primary responsibilities of the assistant coach. So it seems as though Duncan has kind of usurped Hammond. It's very unfortunate. I don't believe that it's something malicious from Tim Duncan. He would never be the type, but it's just an unfortunate situation of the world that we currently live in. So Becky Hammon, I really wish that she were able to get her shot. Maybe it happens this summer. I think we might still be a couple years off, but in any case, I just don't expect it to be with the 76ers this season. So now we're going to move on to who's probably the most often connected name to the Sixers, and that's Ty Lue. As soon as the Sixers fired Brett Brown, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN suggested that he had been hearing that Ty Lue and the Sixers had a very large amount of mutual interest. Lue boasts an NBA championship ring on his resume. That's something that not many of the other candidates can say. Now, there are obviously some questions about how much of that ring can be attributed to Lue and how much is just LeBron James being a machine. So to put it mildly, in my opinion, Lou is a figurehead. And really what I mean by that is that he's someone who will take the title of head coach, but he really does not control much of the responsibilities that a head coach normally does. That worked out pretty much perfectly with LeBron James and the Cavaliers. But the thing is that Joel Embiid is not LeBron James. Ben Simmons is not LeBron James. No one is LeBron James except for LeBron James, and which is why he's the only player in the NBA that I could see succeeding with a coach like Lou. Just Lou running things, quote unquote, I just don't have a lot of faith in it. Would he be a disaster? Probably not. He certainly wouldn't be much of an improvement over Brett Brown, and if he's not much of an improvement, then what's really the point of moving on to Brett Brown just to get Ty Lue? So, someone else that I am very much not interested in. I'm sure that he'll have other opportunities. The New Orleans Pelicans are rumored to be interested in him, so we'll see where he lands. Maybe he stays on with the Clippers as an assistant coach. It's not exactly the worst job in the world. So, again, in short, Ty Lue, thank you, but no thank you. Have a great day. Don't let the door hit you on your way out. So, now to the latest development in Sixers head coach candidates. Mike D'Antoni, formerly of the Houston Rockets, now formerly of the Houston Rockets, has informed the team that he will become a free agent as a coach. So, initial reports from, again, shockingly, ESPN's Adrian Griffin suggested that Mike D'Antoni had informed the Rockets that he will not be returning. And while I do think that is likely the case, the door is still technically open by the way that he left. So I would say that D'Antoni likely will have interest for other teams. Clearly the Sixers are interested because less than a minute later, once again, Woj comes out saying that the Sixers are very much interested in D'Antoni. He's sure to have another job elsewhere. I don't see him returning to the Rockets unless he really doesn't have any other options. They're supposed to be, by all rumors so far, interested in other LA Clippers assistant coach Sam Cassell, who played much of his career with the Rockets. So it does seem like D'Antoni's moving on. It does seem like the Sixers have interest. I don't particularly have interest in Mike D'Antoni. He is a very talented offensive mind. He was actually an assistant coach here in Philadelphia in 2015. Now, while he was here, that's when the Sixers began to really click. The offense did look sharper with D'Antoni as assistant head coach. He's had success before with teams like the Phoenix Suns, the Carmelo Anthony New York Knicks. He really does not understand the defensive side of the ball. He loves his shooters, and I get that, and I appreciate that. It's the way of the future in the NBA, but D'Antoni does it to a fault, which we saw with the 6'4", I believe, PJ Tucker playing center for his Houston Rockets. So I really don't know if he would be able to maximize players such as Joel Embiid. Now, Ben Simmons, on the other hand, I think could thrive with D'Antoni if Elton Brand is being coy and he actually does plan on trading Joel Embiid and keeping Ben Simmons to build around. In that sense, I could see D'Antoni being an okay fit as head coach, but trading either Simmons or Embiid, put me on the record, would be an egregious mistake. So, really, I have no interest in trading Joel Embiid. I have no interest in Mike D'Antoni, to summarize. So, with that being said, those are all of the initial head coaching candidates. The whys, why nots, not really my favorite list, obviously, as I have the complete next section where we will talk about my 4 candidates who I truly do believe can make a positive difference with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to wrap up with our 4 choices to replace Brett Brown. All right, welcome back to the Baseline Scoop. Once again, that was Off Color. Check them out again, Spotify, Apple Music. Now, we just talked about some of the other candidates for the head coaching position for the Philadelphia 76ers, and now we get to my top choices, and we're going to start with a very popular name. That is Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan was most recently the head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder. He saw the transition from the end of the Kevin Durant era through Russell Westbrook and Paul George, and most recently the Thunder, what looked like it was going to be a rebuild, and then the next thing you know, they're the 6th seed in the West last season. So Donovan had an interesting journey with the Thunder. It looked for a while as if he really never did anything to set himself apart from some of the other coaches. In fact, many outside of Oklahoma City anyway had almost been calling for his job for some time because, well, he struggled to maximize that pairing of Westbrook and Paul George. But flash forward to the final year with the Thunder, and Westbrook is traded for Chris Paul. Paul George is traded for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and roughly 1 million draft picks. And the Thunder were given a 0.2% chance to make the NBA Finals according to ESPN. Or rather the playoffs in general, not the finals. So next thing you know, whether it's Chris Paul, whether it's Billy Donovan, not only are the Thunder in the playoffs, but they're the 6th seed. So you really saw some incredible growth from the Thunder, and it's really given many a lot more faith in Billy Donovan. Yes, once again, they suffered a first-round exit. However, it really was a season where many expected the Thunder to be a lottery team. To have that kind of performance, it's absolutely huge. Now, personally, myself, I think a lot of that is more so about Chris Paul than it is about Billy Donovan. But it just was an absolute journey, and Billy Donovan will certainly be able to spin that into another job rather quickly. So just a little bit of history about him. He was a Kentucky assistant under Rick Pitino for a little bit, and then he became the head coach of Marshall University for a couple years. Now, really, where he made his name was with the University of Florida. Now, he had been there for just under 20 years. He coached through back-to-back national championships, coaching talents such as Bradley Beal and actually Sixers, at least for now, power forward / backup center Al Horford. So really, he has an experience with talented players, with cultivating talent. He's not the worst candidate in the world. But of these 4 that I'm going to talk about in this segment, he is a clear-cut 4th. I think Donovan is a decent upgrade over Brett Brown, but not quite a substantial upgrade. So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Again, over Ty Lue, over Mike D'Antoni, I will absolutely cheer for Billy Donovan any day of the week. But by and large, he's not quite my favorite candidate for the Sixers opening. So now we're going to move on to somebody who I've been a supporter of for quite some time. That is former Brooklyn Nets head coach Kenny Atkinson. Now, Kenny Atkinson, well, his departure from the Nets is quite an interesting one. We won't focus too long on that, but essentially what it boils down to is a difference of opinion between him and star Kevin Durant. Even though the Nets have denied any involvement on Durant's part, it's quite clear exactly what happened. Now, Kevin Durant was out for the entire season with an injury. Kyrie Irving missed most of the year with an injury. So, once again, the Nets were primarily working with Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen for the majority of the season. The Nets had also signed DeAndre Jordan, who had assumed upon signing that he would be the team's starting center. And with a healthy Durant and a healthy Irving, that probably would have been the case. Though Kenny Atkinson, after all these injuries, made what turned out to be a bold decision to start Jared Allen over DeAndre Jordan. And the reason that he did that is clear, because Whether or not the Nets are going to keep Jared Allen, I think they're likely to trade him. You have to develop that talent. All you're doing is you're adding to that trade value. So if they're going to make a run at, say, a popular name for them like Bradley Beal, where they will want to increase trade value for as many players as possible, so increasing that trade value for Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, and then Jared Allen, even if it means starting him over DeAndre Jordan, it was clearly the right decision, though not one that Durant appreciated. Apparently, DeAndre Jordan and Kevin Durant are quite close, which explains why DeAndre Jordan signed with the Nets in the first place, rather why Durant wanted Jordan there. So, in the end, Kevin Durant made the decision to move on from Kenny Atkinson. Of course, you're going to make a decision in line with the thinking of your star when they are on that Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo level. So it's not a surprise to see him go. It's certainly not something that is necessarily his fault, and it certainly does not hinder my view of him in any way. I still think he would be a fantastic addition as the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. Just a little bit of history on him. So Atkinson, when he first debuted with the Nets in 2016, he led them that season to a 20-62 record. The Nets were trying to recover in some shape or form after a debilitating trade with the Boston Celtics that set the Celtics up for years to come, really for the next decade, while the Brooklyn Nets were left just in an utter wreck. Atkinson's second season, the Nets moved on from their star, Brook Lopez. Lopez was really the one exciting piece that the Nets had, but in a rebuild, obviously you have to move on and in a sense tank, which unfortunately the Nets did not have any of their own draft picks, which made tanking quite difficult. But nonetheless, Atkinson was able to actually increase the wins that season by 8, even with the subtraction of Brook Lopez. In this season, we started to see a little bit of the growth of Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert. Now, Atkinson's third season with the Nets, this is really where we saw just how special he is as a head coach. The Nets were able to bring in D'Angelo Russell, who proceeded to have the best year, not only of his career so far, but it will be the best year of D'Angelo Russell's career under Kenny Atkinson. In addition to that, Dinwiddie and LeVert took yet another step ahead. Jared Allen continued to develop. Joe Harris continued to develop. And the Nets were actually able to climb all the way up to a respectable record of 42-40. It's a 14-game improvement over the previous season. And they were able to clinch the 6th seed in the East. They proceeded to lose to the Sixers in the first round in just 5 games. But really, considering where they were, it was incredible growth coming from the Brooklyn Nets, and just absolutely an amazing job by Coach Kenny Atkinson. He is known as a player development specialist, and yes, that's a trait that is shared with Brett Brown, and we certainly don't want another Brett Brown, but I can assure you Kenny Atkinson is not that. He has an understanding of the game from an X's and O's perspective, a technical perspective that Brett Brown just simply does not have. He would be a vast improvement over Brown. He's someone who would be able to continue developing players like Shake Milton, Matisse Thybulle, Jair Smith, if he is to become any sort of legitimate NBA player, among hopefully the future young players the Sixers continue to add. Kenny Atkinson would be an amazing mentor, an amazing coach for those, while you're not suffering any really potential for wins. Atkinson could keep this team competitive and then some, being able to lead Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons into an offense that would actually make sense for the two of them. Likely he would have Ben Simmons transition to a little more of a point forward role, something that I'm quite the advocate for, whether or not the Sixers sign Atkinson. Really adding guards to the fold, again, something that I'm an advocate for. And you hope that he would play around Joel Embiid, though it would be interesting just because Atkinson, like almost every coach in the NBA has never had a center like Joel Embiid before. So it would be interesting to see how that pair would really communicate on the offensive end. But I'm excited for it. I think that's certainly a risk worth taking. And Kenny Atkinson is right near the top of my list for my head coaching candidates. But moving on from Atkinson, we do now go to Stan Van Gundy. I don't know that I have ever seen a single head coaching candidate declare publicly as much as Stan Van Gundy has that he wants a job like this. It's not that they're saying, hey, I want to be an NBA head coach again. But Stan Van Gundy at every turn has supported the Sixers and claimed that he wants to be the next head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. From what I've heard, I have not heard a lot of that being reciprocated by the Sixers, which is shocking to me. Van Gundy is an accomplished head coach, most notably for taking Dwight Howard and the Orlando Magic to the NBA Finals while they weren't successful in their trip to the Finals. And actually, that effort against the Los Angeles Lakers was disappointing, I'll say, for Van Gundy and company. It really is an accomplishment. He understands what it's like to build a roster around a star center. When he took the position of really head coach and then some with the Minnesota Timberwolves, you hoped that he would be able to do that with Karl Anthony Towns. It did not quite work out that way. He clearly had a little bit too much power in that situation, but if he were to return purely as a head coach to the 76ers, I think that's a pairing that could absolutely succeed. Van Gundy's offense was shown to be focusing on the NBA, all NBA rather, level talent at center that the roster has. And from there, just surrounding whomever, Dwight Howard, Towns, or Joel Embiid, with an absolute crap ton of shooting. Just, it's a simple idea. It's something that the Sixers, for some reason, cannot figure out. So, with Van Gundy there, you hope that he can lean into Elton Brand's ear or whoever's really in charge and say, just get me my shooters, just get me Buddy Hield, which is, again, another name that I'm pounding the table for. So Van Gundy, I think he could absolutely be a success with the Sixers. It's just a matter of, do the Sixers have that interest in him? Because we know for sure that he's interested in coming to Philadelphia. So really, he is, I would say, not even number 2. I would call him 1B on my list of who I want to coach the Philadelphia 76ers. Again, though, that is just 1B. So the absolute top name that I have for the Philadelphia 76ers is Toronto Raptors assistant coach Adrian Griffin. Now, Griffin is a lot younger in his career than most of these coaching candidates. He has yet to be a head coach at the NBA level, so that would make him a rookie head coach with the Sixers, and that is something that scares many. I'm here to tell you, do not be afraid, because Adrian Griffin would absolutely crush it as the head coach of the 76ers. He will be an amazing head coach no matter where he goes, whether it is Philadelphia, whether it is New Orleans. Chicago should be interested, so there are a lot of options for him. Imei Udoka, again, is a popular name. Adrian Griffin should be vastly a much more popular name, someone that the Sixers should heavily consider. Really, as far as his coaching career, he played for quite a bit in the NBA as a role player, and then shortly after his career ended, he joined Scott Skiles in the Milwaukee Bucks as an assistant. Later on, he joined the Chicago Bulls and Tom Thibodeau. Those are 2 quality coaches that he had an opportunity to learn under. As his career continued, he worked for the Orlando Magic, and then the Oklahoma City Thunder as a lead assistant under fellow Sixers head coach candidate Billy Donovan. And then Griffin really took off when he was hired by the Toronto Raptors in 2018 to be their lead assistant under first-year head coach Nick Nurse. Now, in 2018, Adrian Griffin was absolutely instrumental in the Raptors' 2019 championship run. Now, he, of course, had talented players like a rising Pascal Siakam, like Kawhi Leonard. So there certainly was talent on that Raptors team. LeBron James had just left the Eastern Conference. Somebody had to make it to the finals. But to beat the Golden State Warriors, injuries or not, it's very impressive by the Raptors. And what we've seen defensively from that team over the past 2 years is absolutely incredible. Obviously, you're going to have a good defense if you employ the claw, but even after he left, Kawhi Leonard, that is, before the start of this current season, Adrian Griffin's defense with the Raptors still was absolutely locked down, one of the best in the entire league. It's incredible that you can have that level of defensive play when your two lead guards are Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet. Obviously, you have Siakam still. They signed Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, who, in my opinion, saw the best year of his entire career, especially defensively, which is his focal point, under Adrian Griffin. And OG Anunoby, yes, you have Marc Gasol, who is aging, might I add. So it's impressive to see him continue that defense, Serge Ibaka. But really, just to see them all pull it together, it just speaks to Adrian Griffin. Nick Nurse has given credit to Griffin left and right, any opportunity that he gets. It really is an impressive career we've seen so far by the young assistant coach. Now, again, he's a rookie. That tends to scare people off as far as rookie head coaches. It shouldn't, though, to be frank. Over the past 5 NBA championships, there have been 3 different coaches who have won the NBA championship. That is Steve Kerr, that is Ty Lue, that is Nick Nurse. So something about those 3 coaches, they all won as rookies. Steve Kerr 5 years ago won his first NBA championship as a coach, that is, as a rookie head coach. Ty Lue, he won his as a rookie head coach. Nick Nurse, once again, a rookie head coach. Now, I'm not saying that just because the Sixers sign someone who's never been a head coach before that they're going to win an NBA championship. Obviously, that's not the case. What it means, though, is that if you have the right person, it doesn't make a difference if they've been coaching 10 years, 1 year, however many. It does not matter. What matters is, are they the right person for the job? And I'm here to tell you that Adrian Griffin, the assistant coach of the Toronto Raptors, is the right person for this job. He is the right person to lead Ben Simmons, to lead Joel Embiid, Matisse Thybulle, those 3 defensive monsters. Just think about how much they can improve under Griffin, let alone helping our, let's call them average at best defenders, grow even more. Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz, so on and so forth. He could absolutely just instill a defensive presence in Philadelphia that the fan base would adore, and that could potentially lead us to our first NBA championship since 1983. So, once again, to summarize, Adrian Griffin is absolutely my number 1 choice. Now, there are many other candidates. We will see exactly who they're interested in. Everything that I have heard, I'm sure you're hearing as well. Ty Lue and Mike D'Antoni are the 2 biggest names. Billy Donovan to a slightly lesser degree. Hopefully, the Sixers just find the right candidate. They don't rush just to sign a big name or make a sexy splash, anything like that. Hopefully they take their time, they make the right decision, and we are again set at our head coach position for hopefully the next at least 5 to 10 seasons. So we will see, but thank you so much for joining me on the first episode of the Baseline Scoop. That is all that we have for today. I just really can't say enough how excited I am about this opportunity. And please, again, check out PhillySportsNetwork.com. Listen to PSN Radio. Check out all the other amazing podcasts that we have on there. And one more time, just to see us out, will be local band Off Color. Check them out on Spotify. Check them out on Apple Music. Thank you so much. I am looking forward to episode 2. Thank you for listening.
Blessings I see make me glad for mistakes. I'm learning, not wasting my time.